Hey everybody, Jane here, and I want to talk about my February 2024 reads. And wow, there were a lot of them. So stay tuned.
Pictures and patterns put into words that stream across the page, capturing life as soft spoken.
Alright guys, so February was an incredible reading month for me. I ended up reading 29 books. A lot of them were graphic novels or manga that I was trying to finish so I could get back to the library, but still, it was a lot. And I'm proud of myself, but also I hope that March I have a huge TBR, but I hope I don't actually end up reading quite as many books because as I was going over this list, I was like, I don't know that I'm retaining these nearly as much as I wanted to. So, before we get started on all the things I've read, I do want to talk about my goals and whether I met those. So one of my goals this year was to read at least 10% indie authors. And of the 29 books I read this month, there were 4 that were indie authors. So yes, I did meet the goal there. The other goal I had was to read 50% my owned TBR. There was also 4 of the 29 books that were ones that I owned, and so sadly I did not meet that goal for this month. Next month my TBR is more full of books that I own, so maybe we'll see how that goes. So let me start. I did a mid-month wrap-up, so let me go over in the order that they were read the books I read for my mid-month wrap-up and what I rated them, and then we can start with what I read in the second part of the month. I will link that mid-month wrap-up below so that if you are interested, you can take a look at the books I read at the beginning of the month. All right, so in the first part of February, and books that appear in the mid-month wrap-up that I talk about in detail are Ejaculate Responsibly, which I gave 4 stars, Barbarian's Mate, which I gave 5 stars, Payback, which I gave 2 stars, My Dog is a Death God, Volume 1, which I gave 3 stars, If You'll Have Me, I gave 3 stars, I'm Kinda Chubby and I'm Your Hero, I gave 3 stars, Ascendance of a Bookworm, Volume 3, I gave 4 stars, and A Witch's Guide to Fake Dating a Demon, I gave 4 stars. All right, so everything else is in the second half of the month. I had 2 books I DNF'd. The first one was one I listened to on audiobook, and it was called Flirting Under a Full Moon. I got about 2 hours into this and I just wasn't loving it. It is about this girl and there is a werewolf who is into her, but he has like a reputation of being kind of a playboy and she doesn't know that he's a werewolf. And there is this thing where her cousin gets kidnapped and he helped her rescue her, and I was all about that. And then some stuff happened afterwards and I was like, yeah, this isn't working for me. So I ended up quitting on that one. So it's very sad because I'm trying to read a little more paranormal. I find that I like paranormal, it just has to be done very specific ways for it to work for me. The next DNF I had was a manga, and it was Studio Apartment, Good Lighting, Angel Included. This is about a guy who finds an angel out on his balcony and keeps her as a pet, basically. She becomes his roommate. She doesn't know anything about the world, and I wanted to love it. I just was reading and I was bored and I didn't care, and everybody was acting very young, and I just decided to nope out at that point. All right, so the books from here on out, I'm going to go, hopefully, if I don't forget any, in the order from my least favorite to my most favorite. So these are 3 stars. I didn't have any 1 stars or any 2 stars. That's pretty common for me. It's very rare for me to have a 2 star because I DNF books if I'm not enjoying them or if I'm having like feeling like it's going to be a 2 star. Usually it's not going to be a 2 star unless I have real issues with it. So, all right. So our first 3 star is Bride Story Volume 3. This is about, it's a historic manga about people who are, I think they're Bedouins or maybe they're Mongols, and they're tribal people who are living in this desert. And in this particular one, there was a guy who was visiting the tribe, one of the tribes in the first 2 books, and he's off adventuring somewhere else and meets a girl. I really enjoyed book 1. Book 2 I didn't love, and this one I think I'm done. I'm pretty sure I'm done. There was nothing this book did that made me care, and so I just don't think I'm going to continue it. It didn't do anything particularly wrong. Like, one of the issues I'd had before was there is in book 1 and 2 a marriage that has an age gap that's kind of icky, but like it's made so it's not icky, and like there was a little bit of it possibly going icky, and it didn't get icky in this one. Those characters weren't really here all that much, so there wasn't an ick factor. I just decided I didn't care. All right, so our next book is Beastars Volume 1. So I actually got this for my daughter because she was pretty obsessed with wolves and it has a wolf on it, and she wanted to read some manga because her sister's really into manga. So I got this for her and I decided to read it because I'd heard some good things about it. I did not love Volume 1. So this is about a school that has carnivores and herbivores, but like people don't eat each other out of courtesy. And this wolf is part of the drama club, and one of the members of the drama club is unalived, and so they're trying to sort out like what happened, why was this drama club guy unalived, and we don't really get much in the way of answers in Volume 1. I will be honest, if I didn't know more about what happened later, I probably wouldn't have continued the series. However, I did end up reading more of the series and do plan to continue, at least for the time being. The next book I read is The Marriage Act. This book, this book is about the British government passes a law that makes it so people can upgrade their marriage to a smart marriage and have like an Alexa-ish thing monitoring their marriage. And if they choose to do that, they get certain benefits. And then also, like, if the government feels they're having some issues, the government can step in, the government can order a divorce, all kinds of stuff. This book is very much a dystopian, and it's really not very much about the relationships of the couples that are portrayed in the story. And I think I wanted more how it affected people in a relational level and less about the fighting to, get it overturned and how the law is bad and things like that. Like, I get that we were going to have some of that, but it just felt like it became all about, these people fighting the law and then this person like doing this or this to try to get people on board to vote for the party that had the Marriage Act, and just all the stuff that I didn't fully care about. This book got kind of slow sometimes. I did think it was interesting, and I thought there was a lot of really important conversations. I just got really bored. So that's in my list of 3s. The next book is Unbreak My Heart. This is a kind of an arranged marriage, secret pregnancy-ish parenting romance. So we have these two people who are childhood best friends. The guy's name is Shane, and I think the girl's name is Kate. And they're childhood friends. They were actually, I think, raised like cousins because he was a foster kid and his foster parents were her aunt and uncle. Anyway, they're adults now. He's married her best friend. She's in his life, but he's kind of mean to her and doesn't really like her very much. And, she's mostly just friends with his wife. Well, his wife dies. And so she steps in to help him raise the four kids that are left behind. And then subsequently ends up pregnant. And they're trying to figure out like where their relationship lies. My issue with this book is that the main guy, his name Shane, he's just kind of awful, and he's awful to Kate throughout the whole book. And he never felt redeemable. He always felt icky. And I just really was kind of frustrated with him throughout the entire book. And I didn't necessarily believe at the end when we're told they're going to have a happily ever after that they would actually have a happily ever after, because he's just such a jerk. So I liked a lot of what was happening. I liked the idea of the story. There were some really funny, cute moments. I loved what it was trying to be. I just didn't love what it actually was. All right, the next book on this list is The Only One Left by Riley Sager. I am going to do a whole video about this one. The quick version of my thoughts on this book is that Riley Sager may just not be for me. I love the beginning of a lot of Riley Sager's books, but sometimes he just gets all the twists. And this one was one where I just got tired of the twists and I was over it. And there was just so many twists at the end, and twists that I didn't think made sense, things that didn't work for me, things that kind of changed how I viewed characters. And I was kind of mad at the book by the end of it. So I loved everything up until we started getting all the reveals. It is about a woman who goes to be a caregiver for this invalid. She can't speak. She only has use of like her fingers on her left hand, and she is accused of unaliving her entire family. So kind of a Lizzie Borden-esque character. And so this caregiver wants to find out while she's there what really happened. Did she really do it? So like I said, I just think it had too many things I didn't enjoy and didn't like, and I was like, okay, this is fine, but it's not amazing. So yeah, beginning was great, too many twists by the end. If you love all the twists, you might like it. It was just too many twists for me. We're moving on to my 4 stars now. The next book is Island in a Puddle. This is a manga, and if I tell you very much about it, it will spoil everything. So there are siblings, and their mom is neglectful, and they cross paths with a criminal element. And I think that's what I will say. This book, had I known what it was going in, because the back doesn't really tell you what's happening, and I was very invested in the beginning. Once I figured out what was happening, what we were doing, I was like, oh, I'm not interested anymore. So I decided that I don't want to read this. So I did finish this one. It was fine. I don't have any critiques of it other than I'm just not interested in the story, and I won't be continuing. But it was good. It was well written. I thought it was doing cool things, just not for me. The next one, we have another manga, and that is Puppy Love. It is Puppy Love. It is about a guy who was a dog in a past life, and he's reincarnated, and he takes up a job as a shopkeeper at this pet store. And he meets this guy who comes in to adopt a dog, and he can speak to the dog, and he thinks that this guy he's meeting is the person who like rescued him in a past life. And so he basically devotes himself to being as helpful to this guy as possible, and it becomes a BL manga by the end of it, which was fine. I had a good time with it. It didn't do anything extraordinary, but it was a good time. I liked it. The next one is in real life. This is a graphic novel. This is about a girl who is playing video games and gets some information about not data mining, like mining. Groups of people in another country are playing the game to get real life money for these corporations, and they are being treated very poorly, and she kind of is like, hey, that's unfair, and there's a lot of commentary about that. She tries to help them. I thought this was a very interesting read, fairly important. I really enjoyed that I got to read it and that it talked about these topics. The art was absolutely lovely, and I just had a really good time. I like video games, and I thought this was really well done, both with a cool concept but also a bigger discussion. The next one on my list is Nestlings. This is a horror about a husband and wife who have a little baby, and they are selected to move into this apartment building. The wife is recently a paraplegic. She's a wheelchair user. I don't know if she's quite paraplegic. It's waist down. But she became that way after the birth of their child. She is trying to deal with it. He's trying to deal with, having a wife who's now a wheelchair user, a baby who, needs him, and they're moving into this house, and some creepy stuff starts happening, and I won't tell you anymore, but it was fun. I am going to be doing a video review about this one too, I believe. It was a cool time. I had a good time. There were times it got very slow and times that I kind of felt eye-rolly about it, but overall, I generally enjoyed it. The next book was Beastars Volume 2. This is the same as plot as Volume 1. I liked it better. We started to have a lot more of the character development I was looking for, and interesting things were starting to happen, so I will be continuing the series. I enjoyed Volume 2 a lot more than Volume 1. The next book was a buddy read that I did with Kaoru, who is a fellow writer who lives in India. And so we did a buddy read for this. This is about these two roommates who they're in college at the start of the book, and they're about to go on to graduate school at a different school. And she has her bank account emptied by a bad guy, like somebody who was being deceptive. And so she's not sure where she's going to live in postgraduate school, because all of her housing money got taken, and the person that took it was the person who was supposed to be getting her housing, and it's a whole messed up thing. So she ends up, being in a very sticky situation. Well, the guy, I think his name is Beck, he was supposed to get married, and him and his fiance were supposed to go into these married people housing. Well, the bride basically calls it off last minute, and so he's like, well, now I can't be in married housing. I don't have housing either. And since him and her are already roommates, they're like, well, we'll just get married and then we'll get it annulled. But, we'll have the housing issue situated. You won't have to, worry about where, you don't have to be homeless, to the girl. And then for him, he gets the married housing, and it's fine. So they do get married, they move in together, and of course they've been roommates this whole time, but now it's like a fake marriage because they're in a new school, nobody knows them, and it was really cute. I really had a good time with this one. The characters were hilarious. Just a lot of funny banter and funny moments, and characters who I wanted to root for. So I had a good time with this one. The next book on my list is Ascendance of a Bookworm, Volume 4. I'm still enjoying this series. This is about a girl who is reincarnated. It's not quite reincarnated, but it's kind of reincarnated into the body of a little girl who is in a different world where she doesn't have access to books, so she is trying to make books. And this is like her continued adventure. Still loving this, still going to continue. Another that we're kind of long-term on is Blood on the Tracks. Still really enjoying this, still going to continue. This is about it starts out with a boy who is on a vacation with his family, and his cousin has an accident that wasn't an accident, and he saw some stuff, and now he's questioning a lot of things about his family, and particularly about his mother. It's still horrific, and it's still really good. That one was also creepy. Like, they're all just creepy, but I love it. The next book was The King's Spinster Bride. This is a Ruby Dixon, and y'all know I love Ruby Dixon. So far, I have not given any of her books under a 4. And this one, under 4. This was a 4. So my biggest complaint is the books, and I've read one other book in this world. I think they're novellas in this world, and there's not a lot. I don't know what's going on because I haven't read like the main series of this world. So I find it a little frustrating because there's cool stuff happening, but I don't really understand the world, and it's not explained, and that's probably my fault and not Ruby Dixon's fault. This book is about a woman who, her husband is a cyclops. Now, in their case, they're not born with one eye. They like remove it as a sign of their like status as a warrior. But anyway, let me back up. Her dad was the king, and the Cyclopses invaded, and she had in this war she had protected the Cyclops son. She's sent to a nunnery because she is going to grow up, and people are going to try to put her on the throne, and instead wants the little boy who was who inherited from his dad the Cyclops kingdom after the war. He comes back and he's like, you protected me. I've kind of always had a thing for you. Let's get married and join our kingdoms and bring peace again. And she says, yeah, sure, that's fine. And in this world, the wedding ritual for the Cyclops is kind of weird. And so we see them going through the different steps of the kind of weird marriage ritual. This doesn't have a ton of plot. It doesn't have a ton of world building. It's cute. It was fine. I enjoyed it. It was a nice little novella palette cleanser. It's not something I necessarily thought I would write home about, and it's not like the Ice Planet Barbarians books, which I like love and are my favorite, but it was still a good time. The next book I read, we're still in the 4 stars, guys, was Morning Glory Milking Farm. I don't even know what to tell you guys about this book. There's a girl, and she is struggling to find a job and pay her bills. So she gets a job at a pharmaceutical company that uses a certain fluid from minotaurs to make their medication. And so her responsibility is to go and help with the extraction process of this fluid. So in doing so, she meets a minotaur who takes a liking to her. And they start kind of flirting while she does her job, and then they start dating, and it's kind of a Pretty Woman situation-ish. There's reasons, like, I think it's kind of a Pretty Woman situation-ish. There's a lot of arguments that could be made that it's not, but I think it probably is. So, it's a spicy book. It was not at all what I was expecting, but it was a good time. I did definitely enjoy this one. All right, the next book was sadly on my 5-star prediction list. It did not get 5 stars, but it did get a nice solid 4, and that was Bookshops and Bone Dust. I really loved Legends and Lattes, and Legends and Lattes was a 5-star for me. This one was not. It was fine. It is a prequel to Legends and Lattes. Viv, who is an orc, I believe. I can never remember if she's an orc or an ogre, but she's one or the other, and I think it's orc. She is a fighter, and in this book, she is injured and has to go recuperate in this town, and she makes friends with the baker, and she makes friends with the lady who owns the bookstore, and she helps the bookstore go from kind of like a failing business to a thriving business. It's a very low stakes fantasy. And for me, I think the stakes were a little too low. And like, I'd already read Legends and Lattes. I knew that none of the things that happened in this book were significant. And also, without being spoilery, I thought in a lot of ways it negated some things in Legends and Lattes, because in Legends and Lattes, there's a certain magic thing that's important to the story. And we are kind of led to believe that a lot of the things that happen in Legends and Lattes has to do with this magic thing. And like, the problem is that in this prequel, the same kind of things are happening, but she doesn't presumably have this magic thing. And so it kind of is like, well, that magic thing didn't really matter now, did it? So I liked this because I thought, it's a bookstore, and there were some great moments and some cute stuff, and like at one point, like she's helping set up a blind dates with the book thing, and like my little book lover heart just thought this was great. But it was slow, and I knew that none of this mattered because Viv, like, I've read Legends and Lattes. I know how things turned out. So I was kind of, this didn't have the oomph I wanted it to have, and it was kind of slow in places too. So it was fine. It was good. I wish it had come out first, or I wish it had been a sequel with some changes. I don't even know, but it just wasn't quite what I wanted it to be, but it wasn't bad. All right, so we are jumping on to my 5-star reads of the month. There are 2 of them, and both of them are manga this month, which is interesting. I read a lot of books, and the 2 5-stars are manga. The first one is A Man and His Cat. This is about a man who gets a cat. This is a cat who has been passed up a lot of times. He's a very specific breed of cat, and people just don't find him cute. And this dude comes to the pet store, gets this cat, adopts him, and we start learning about this man and like why he's getting a cat. And we get the reactions of the cat to this whole thing. And it was just cute and lovely. And I loved learning about the man and like why he was getting the cat. And I still don't fully know, and I'm in the process of reading book 2, why he needed to get the cat, but like we're getting more clues, so good time. All right, and lastly, and my favorite book of the month is The Savior's Book Cafe Story in Another World. Such a title, Volume 1. This is about a 30-year-old woman who is called to basically be a savior in this fantasy world, and she's like, I don't really want to go. And the guy's like, we're like, the god of their world's like, you have to go, but I will grant you a wish, or I'll grant you wishes to like help you hone your powers. And long story short, she ends up having a cafe in this little fantasy world, and she is probably going to have to save the world, but she's not doing it yet. She, for now, is just serving tea and reading books, and it is lovely. And it's kind of like Ascendance of a Bookworm, except without the whininess of the like child character. We have a much more mature character, and I'm really here for this. So I cannot wait to read more in that series. It is amazing. So those were all the books I read in the month of February. How was your February reading month? Tell me in the comments below. Did you read a lot of books, or was it kind of a slower reading month since it was, fewer days? I don't know how I managed this many books in 29 days. It was crazy. Also, if you read any of the books that I mentioned in this video, please comment below and tell me, did you like them? Do you agree with my thoughts? Did you have very different thoughts? If you don't really have anything else to say, you can leave a book emoji below because it helps the algorithm and I appreciate it. This has been Jane. Thanks, guys. Bye.